Hi, my name is Kerri Owens. I will be teaching a lesson today on story elements for third grade. So for today, we are just going to be doing the introductory part of the lesson. And then as the week goes on, we would be going deeper into the different elements and how they connect and react to one another, how they are interwoven to tell a story. So I hope you enjoy. Good morning, students, and welcome back to your language arts class. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's really exciting to me because I love a good story. And we're going to be talking about story elements. What are the things that happen in a story, the things that come together to really tell that tale that just grips you and draws you in? So it's going to take us through the week to really get into all of the different ways that they work together. But today, like I said, today is the introduction. So we'll be just identifying the different things. So let's talk about the standards. What TEKS are you going to be learning to prepare you as a third grader? So the first one is TEKS 3.8b, which is I will be able to explain the relationship among major and minor characters. So those are two words that we're going to talk about. What makes a character a major character and what makes one a minor character. We're also going to be learning about different plot elements. So you can look at this picture here and you can see every story has some kind of a problem. You might also hear it called conflict, but it's an issue that the characters must work through, a problem that has to be solved, some kind of difference. How is it different from the beginning of the story to the end? What things happen? So we have the problem and then all the things that happen and they just come to a point, and then this is what we actually call the climax. And then after that, things just kind of resolve. So we come to the solution for the problem. And then finally, let me move my head so you can see, we're going to talk about setting. And setting is when and where the story takes place, which oftentimes has a huge impact on the characters and the things that happen in the story. So that's where we're going today. To get us started, I want you to think about a story that you've enjoyed, something maybe your favorite story. It could be a book series like the Harry Potter series. It could be a movie, or maybe even just a story that your parents or grandparents told you at bedtime. It could be any of those things, but I want you to think of a story and then go to your Schoology account, and you're going to find for today's lesson, you'll see a Padlet. And I'm going to have you open the Padlet. And we've used this before, so you know what to do. It opens up a screen and you click on the screen and it'll give you a box where you can share your thoughts. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. And what I want you to do is think of that story that you really enjoyed. And then in the box, I want you to tell what was the story, what kind of story it was, and why did you enjoy it. And then as you're waiting, you can read what some of your classmates have put on the Padlet instead at the same time. So you can share yours and then also see what your classmates said. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. I'm going to be quiet now and let you work. At this point, I would give them the 5 minutes, and we're just going to skip ahead to saying the 5 minutes is over and they're back with me. All right, so we've got lots of really good responses on the Padlet. I was noticing some of the different things that y'all enjoy. Levi, I'm not surprised that your story that you chose is a baseball story, because I know that that's something that you really enjoy in your own life. So it's one of the things we like, stories that we can connect to. Let's see, Brianna, Gage, Zavon. Y'all all three said that your story was funny. I like a good comedy too. Things that make you laugh can really uplift your spirits. Micah and Mason, I see that you liked ghost stories. Like, is it Mary Downing Hahn that writes the scary stories that I know I've enjoyed. So that's always fun. And I see Alexis. Yeah, I've read some of the Junie B. Jones books too. She is hilarious. Um, yeah, I enjoy her. Okay, so I'm going to keep the Padlet on here so that it's going to stay on your Schoology. So if you want to go back and look and see what your classmates have said, maybe you didn't have time to read all of them, that's always going to be a good resource for you to go. And maybe if you're looking for a new story to read, you can check there and see what your classmates are enjoying. Okay. We're going to come back to that as the week goes on. We'll come back to thinking about your favorite stories. But for now, I want to model for you using a story that we all have in common, because we just recently finished reading Bud Not Buddy, which I think the majority of you really enjoyed. I know it's one of my favorite books. So we're going to use Bud Not Buddy as an example, and I'm going to model for you how you would identify the different parts of the story, the different elements. And let's see, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, do that. And here we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about Bud Not Buddy and some of the different story elements that were there. So if you will notice that I have opened up the chat so that as I'm filling out this chart as an example, you can also comment in the chat if there are things that you have questions on, or you just want to add comments. You're welcome to do that in the chat as I'm filling in the example. So for Bud Not Buddy, major characters. Now, the major characters are the ones that the story really revolves around. So, of course, we would have Bud, because he was the main character. Since he's the main character, I'm going to put a little asterisk there by him. Okay. But we also had some other characters that were really key to the story, that the story really revolved around them. So Bud, of course, the main character, but he was in search of who he thought was his father, which we know turned out to be his grandfather, and that was Herman Calloway. And then a character that we didn't really meet, but she had a huge influence on the story, and her name was Angela Janet. And who was that? Put in the chat if you remember who Angela Janet was. That's right. She was Bud's mom. Okay. But we also had some really interesting minor characters. So if you think about those, we had Miss Grace. She was kind of the mother figure for Bud when he started hanging out with the band. We had Lefty Lewis, who he met on the road, which I would never recommend that you do. You don't get in the car with strangers, but setting is also important, and it was the 1930s. We had the band members. We had his fake family. Remember, they hit him on the head and kept calling him Clarence. Remember that? Fake family. The librarian. Okay, so you get the idea, the minor characters. All right. Setting, I've already mentioned, and it was the 1930s. It was the Great Depression. And later this week, we will be looking at why that was so significant. What the Great Depression, the setting actually was almost as influential as it was as influential as some of the characters were. It really shaped the story. Okay, I'm going to stop there because it's been 10 minutes. So what I would do is I would continue going on and filling in that chart. Oh, I guess I could stop the screen share. Okay, so I would finish filling in the chart with them and look at the comments that they make. And then the next part of the lesson is that I would have a story for them to read on their own and fill in their own chart in their small groups. So I would have breakout groups that were already predetermined. And so I would move the students into their breakout groups so that they could read the story together and then talk about the story elements and just identify them, because later in the week we would go into how those elements come together and play off of one another. So as far as differentiation, part of it would be that I would purposefully put students into groups where they could work together. For this particular lesson, I would have them working with other students that are at this a very similar level. And so for the students who are right now not proficient, I would put them in a group, and then they would open up a document that would be attached to Schoology for them to do for their story. But I would have the answers, the different things that go in the boxes. I would have those on. Okay, so it would actually be a form in Google that they could go to, and they would move the answers into the correct boxes. If I'm saying that correctly. Yes. So they would actually have the answers there, but they would put them into the appropriate places. My proficient group would fill out the chart just the same as I was doing. They're going to fill in for the different characters, major and minor, setting, plot, problem, solution. And then my advanced group, I would have do the same chart, but then I would also have them in the story, I would have them do a second chart, and I would have them reimagine the story. So where the story that I have them reading is about pandas. That's why the pandas. And the story, I would have them reimagine it as in, what if the main characters were the penguins that were at the end of the story? What if the penguins had been the main character? How would that have changed things? And then have them do a chart based on that reimagining of the story. So then after that, after they've done their group work, I would have another story. These are actually just short paragraph, couple of paragraphs, where I would have them do this activity on their own, and they would read the story. They would answer questions about the plot, the setting, the characters, and then it would also be differentiated so that the higher group, I would ask them questions more about, like, suppose the setting had taken place in Africa, the African jungle, instead of the Antarctica. What if they go into the jungle? So something like that, where they would have to figure out how that would really change the story. So they would have to interact with it that way. Let's see if there was anything else. Okay, so I did notice that the majority of the class was at the not proficient level. I would definitely be checking in with them more frequently to make sure that they're understanding before we get too far into the process. So I would probably pop into their groups a little bit more often, but I would also pop into the proficient and the advanced to make sure that they are going as deep as they need to, because every student deserves to grow. And I think sometimes we think that the advanced students and the students that already have it, it's easy to say, okay, you know, kind of pat them on the head. You've got it. You're good. Go read a book, whatever. And I'm going to work with these lower students. And that's fine. And it's fine to have students, the higher students help the lower students some, but it's most important that we're making sure that each student is given a chance to grow. So if they already have the basics, I mean, if they came into the school year knowing 80% of the curriculum already, then we need to make sure that we are giving them more, challenging them more, having them do more production where they're actually coming up with things and making connections and going deeper with the curriculum. So anyway, I'm going to stop there, and sorry for my little stumbles. This is kind of different than what I'm used to. I'm used to having my students be there to interact with me, but I hope that this meets the needs that you had, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you.